My name is Haley, I'm 24 and I'm the technical director of a startup in Seattle. I work long hours, sleep very little and constantly feel like I have to prove myself. Especially to my family who still don't quite understand what I do or how much responsibility I carry. A few weeks ago we were celebrating my sister Brianna's 26th birthday. My parents decided to throw a big party for her at their condo on Capitol Hill. They asked me to help out with the planning, which in our family has always meant doing the heavy lifting without any of the credit. I handled most of it. I ordered the catering from a vegan-friendly spot Brianna loves, picked up decorations on my way back from a work meeting, paid for the drinks, even booked a local acoustic band Brianna used to follow back in college. I didn't mind doing these things at first. She's my older sister and we've always had this uneven dynamic where she gets the spotlight and I stay behind the scenes, making sure everything runs smoothly. I've gotten used to it. At least I thought I had. That night the apartment was packed. Looked amazing. Candles, string lights, flowers everywhere, the whole place buzzing with conversation. Brianna walked in wearing a ridiculous silver dress, like she was attending a red carpet event. Everyone gasped and cheered like she was royalty, and I stood there holding a bag of melting ice and a clipboard with the delivery schedule. She didn't even say hi to me when she walked in. She went straight to our mom and started complaining about the flower arrangements. Our parents, of course, fawned over her like she'd just come back from war. My mom handed her a glass of wine, my dad gave her this long hug and I stood there like a guest. No one thanked me for setting up the entire thing. I tried to brush it off, told myself it wasn't a big deal, that I didn't do it for the recognition. But it stung. The guests started arriving around 7:30. A few old family friends, some of Brianna's coworkers, her college friends. I didn't know most of them. I stayed busy, refilling drinks, keeping an eye on the food table, helping people hang their coats. At one point one of the guests, a guy named Aaron who used to date Brianna, mistook me for the hired help. He literally asked me if I could bring more napkins to the back patio. I laughed thinking he was joking but he just stared at me waiting. I went and got the napkins. The worst part came later around 10. The band had finished playing their set and everyone was tipsy and relaxed, gathered in the living room. Brianna, of course, was holding court, talking about her new job in PR and how stressful her commute was. Someone suggested we do a toast. My mom called for silence and raised her glass. She gave this long flowery speech about how proud she was of Brianna, how beautiful and accomplished she'd become, how she's always been the heart of the family. She didn't mention me once. Not a single word. After the toast, people started clapping and hugging Brianna. I went to the kitchen to refill my drink, trying to shake it off. That's when my dad came in, saw me pouring wine into a plastic cup and said, "Don't you think you've had enough? You've been kind of uptight all evening." I blinked at him, trying to figure out if he was serious. I had barely touched a drink all night, too busy making sure everyone else had what they needed. But it wasn't about the wine. That comment, it was like a slap in the face. As if I was being difficult just by existing in that space. Just by not being Brianna. I left early. Didn't say goodbye to anyone. I ordered a Lyft and sat in the back seat watching the lights of the city blur past, trying to hold back the lump in my throat. When I got home I checked my phone. Not a single text from my parents. Nothing from Brianna. The only message I had was from the caterer, asking if I'd be paying the remaining balance by Monday. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every moment of that evening, every small humiliation, every time I was overlooked, misjudged, treated like an afterthought. I had always told myself that family dynamics are complicated, that not everyone shows appreciation the same way. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just spent an entire day being invisible in a room full of people who claimed to love me. And the worst part? Deep down I wasn't even surprised. Just when I thought the night couldn't get any more unbearable, it did. I was still in the kitchen, pretending to care about a half-filled glass of wine, when I heard my father's voice rise above the chatter in the living room. He was holding up his glass again, smiling that overly theatrical smile he reserves for parties, the one that makes people think he's the kind of dad who tells funny stories and gives wise advice. He cleared his throat, tapping the edge of his wine glass with a spoon. "Before the night ends," he said, already swaying slightly from the drinks, "I have one more surprise. A real gift from one sister to another." I paused, my stomach tightening. There was a beat of silence as everyone turned toward him. "I think it's time we all celebrate not just Brianna's birthday," he continued, looking around dramatically, "but also the incredible generosity of our Haley. She's decided, on this special day, to gift her penthouse apartment to her sister. Isn't that incredible?" At first I thought I must have misheard him. That I'd imagined it, that the wine had gotten to my head. But then I saw people clapping. Real clapping. Applause. Some gasped and turned to look at me like I had just announced a Nobel Prize donation. And Brianna. God, Brianna did this fake little gasp, her hand going to her mouth like she was so deeply touched. Like this was all news to her. Like she hadn't spent the past 2 months asking vague questions about the apartment every time we had dinner. I saw it then. So clearly. The way her eyes shifted for a fraction of a second toward our mom, then back to the crowd. The way she didn't immediately deny it or ask if it was a joke. He was in on it. They were all in on it. I walked back into the living room slowly with that same sick feeling you get when your body knows something is wrong before your mind catches up. My father still had his glass raised. The whole room was waiting, eyes on me, expecting some warm, emotional confirmation. And all I said was, no. It came out calm. Almost too calm. One word, flat, without explanation. And just like that the room shifted. I saw shoulders drop. The clapping slowed, then stopped. My mother's face tightened like she'd been slapped. My father blinked at me, confused for a moment, like maybe I was kidding. Brianna's arm, which had been halfway extended as if she were about to do this dramatic sisterly hug, froze midair. The energy in the room died instantly. No? My dad asked as if he couldn't process it. I looked at him. I never agreed to that. I don't know where you got the idea that I would give away the apartment I spent the last 5 years working for, but no, that's not happening. Brianna let out this tiny, performative laugh. Wait, what? I thought, Dad said. She looked between him and me, and I could see her putting the pieces together, realizing I wasn't going to play along with whatever narrative they had cooked up. Dad stepped forward, still trying to salvage the moment, smiling like this was all just a funny misunderstanding. Come on, sweetheart, it's just a gesture. You have your startup, you don't even live there full-time anymore. I stared at him, stunned. That's not the point. You don't announce something like that for me. You don't decide for me. That place is mine. I bought it. I renovated it. I pay the mortgage. You don't get to just give it away like it's a pair of earrings. Someone in the room laughed awkwardly. A few people were looking down at their drinks, clearly uncomfortable. My mom stepped in then, trying to smooth things over. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding, she said, putting a hand on my arm. We just thought, since you're so successful now, you wouldn't mind sharing a little. You're always saying you don't need that much space. That phrase hit me like a slap. You're so successful now. Like I'd earned the right to be robbed. My breath caught in my throat. I stepped back from her hand. Sharing a little? This isn't about space. It's about you using me as a prop to make Brianna feel better. You all act like I owe her something just for existing. Well, I don't. Brianna's face was full of mock hurt now. She blinked at me with these wide, innocent eyes. I didn't even ask for the apartment, she said softly. This is all new to me too. Sure, I said, my voice colder than I meant it to be. That's why you've been asking about the square footage and the building's pet policy every time we talk. She flushed. For the first time that evening she had no answer. There was a long, painful silence. I looked around the room at these people. Family, friends, old neighbors, co-workers. None of them knowing what to do, what to say. Some of them still held their glasses in midair, like they were waiting for permission to put them down. I didn't wait for more drama. I turned, walked toward the hallway, grabbed my coat and left. No one followed me. I had just reached the hallway, halfway into putting on my coat, when I heard my father's footsteps behind me. Fast, sharp, heavier than usual. He wasn't calling my name. He wasn't asking me to come back. There were no words, just that dreadful silence that follows a public confrontation, when everyone is too stunned to speak but too curious to look away. Then I felt it. His hand. Hard. Sudden. Blinding. The pain hit a second later, delayed like lightning before the thunder. His palm had connected with the side of my face so forcefully that I staggered back a step. My left earring ripped from my ear and skidded across the hardwood floor. Time seemed to stop. The only thing I could hear for a moment was the sharp ring in my ears, and the thudding of my own heartbeat. It was dead quiet. The kind of silence that feels physical, like pressure in the room. Dozens of people stood frozen, eyes wide, mouths slightly open, wine glasses hovering midair. No one moved. No one said a word. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just bent down slowly and picked up my earring, my fingers trembling slightly. It was a small silver hoop, now slightly bent. The clasp had snapped, and there was a tiny trace of blood on the post where it had torn through my ear. I held it in my hand for a second, then looked up. He was standing there, chest heaving slightly, red in the face, his hand still raised a little as if even he couldn't quite believe what he had done. His expression wasn't regret. It was something colder. Something uglier. Like I had dared to embarrass him and he had done what he thought was necessary to put me back in place. My mother rushed over a moment later, her voice trembling, eyes darting toward the guests, already in damage control mode. "Haley, please," she whispered, almost pleaded. "Just apologize. Let's not make this worse. Apologize." I turned my head toward her slowly. My cheek was throbbing. I could already feel it swelling. The irony of her request hit me like a second slap. Not him. Me. I was supposed to be the one to apologize. To soothe his ego. To make it all disappear so no one had to acknowledge what had just happened. I looked past her across the room at Brianna. She hadn't moved. She was standing by the bar cart, one hand on a half-full glass of champagne, the other hanging loosely at her side. Her mouth was slightly open but she said nothing. There was no panic in her expression. No fear. Just stillness. Cold, perfect stillness. Like a statue. And I knew then more clearly than ever that this family had never really seen me as one of them. I was the utility. The background. The one who made things happen, fixed things, paid for things. The one who kept quiet. Until I didn't. I walked forward slowly, not toward anyone in particular, just back into the center of the room. I placed the bent earring into my coat pocket, adjusted the other one in my ear, brushed my hair back and straightened my posture. My face was burning. Not just from the hit but from the weight of all the eyes that were on me. I didn't care. I looked directly at Brianna. Right into her eyes. "Happy birthday," I said. "Come, clear." Not loud. Just enough for everyone to hear. Then I turned and walked out the front door. I stood just outside the building, the autumn air sharp against the swelling in my cheek. My fingers gripped my phone with a kind of desperation I hadn't felt in years, and I didn't even think twice before dialing her number. One ring, two. Then her voice, steady and familiar, answered. "Haley." The second I heard her, everything inside me cracked. But I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just said in the most even voice I could manage, "Grandma, he hit me." There was a long silence on the line. No gasps. No frantic questions. Just a deep, quiet breath. Then, "Where are you?" "I'm outside the apartment. Brianna's party. I'll be there in 20 minutes. It took her 30. I knew she had to come from West Seattle, and the bridge traffic was never predictable, especially at night. I waited on the front steps of the building, arms wrapped around myself, my phone screen dark, no other calls, no messages. My father hadn't followed me. My mother hadn't checked on me. Brianna hadn't so much as peeked through the blinds. But when my grandmother finally arrived, her car rolled to a slow, precise stop in the loading zone, and she got out with the calm force of a woman who had seen too much in life to be afraid of one more confrontation. Olivia was 74, impeccably dressed as always in a charcoal gray wool coat and leather gloves, her white hair pinned neatly in place. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask questions. She just looked at me for a long second, scanned my face and then turned toward the building entrance. "I need you to come with me," she said simply. We took the elevator up in silence. I could hear the party noise faintly as we approached the hallway, though it had quieted significantly since I left. When we reached the door, Olivia didn't knock. She opened it and walked in like she owned the place. And in that moment it felt like she did. The air changed as soon as she entered. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. People turned, first curious then tense. My father, still standing near the fireplace with a glass in his hand, froze when he saw her. He had that look on his face, part confusion, part dread, that I'd only seen once before at my uncle's funeral when Olivia had single-handedly shut down a family argument with 3 words and a single look. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't storm in. She just stepped forward slowly and with total control and said, "You hit my granddaughter?" Her voice cut through the room like a knife. Precise. Every syllable weighed down with something heavy and immovable. My father blinked. His mouth opened slightly as if trying to formulate some kind of excuse. But Olivia didn't give him time. "You hit her," she repeated, now standing directly in front of him. "Tell me you didn't." He didn't answer. That was enough. She looked around the room slowly, scanning the faces of the guests, most of whom had gone pale or were pretending to check their phones. Her gaze finally stopped on Brianna, who still hadn't moved from her spot near the bar. "You watched this happen?" Olivia asked her, not unkindly but not softly either. Brianna didn't respond. She looked down, her cheeks flushed. My mother finally stepped forward, wringing her hands, eyes darting between Olivia and my father. "It was a misunderstanding," she began, her voice breaking. "We didn't mean." But Olivia held up a single hand and my mother fell silent immediately. "I don't want explanations," she said. "I want her earring." There was a beat of confusion in the room. "If that earring isn't found and returned in the next 5 minutes," Olivia said slowly, "I make the decision." She didn't explain what that meant. She didn't need to. In our family, Olivia making a decision meant consequences. Real ones. Financial ones. Legacy-level ones. Everyone in the room knew exactly what she meant, even if they pretended not to. Her words still held weight, the kind of weight that moved money, property, and loyalties. And then, like someone had flipped a switch, the room erupted into quiet motion. People began looking down, moving furniture, peeking under the couch, checking corners and rugs. Even Brianna bent down and looked under the bar cart, though her movements were half-hearted. I stood just inside the doorway, saying nothing. My cheeks still throbbed and the inside of my mouth tasted like copper, but I wasn't angry anymore. Not in that moment. Just numb. Detached. Olivia didn't move. She stood still in the center of the room, eyes fixed on my father, watching him with the stillness of someone who had all the time in the world, and all the power. And he couldn't look her in the eye. It took them 3 minutes to find the earring. It had slid beneath the sideboard in the corner of the living room, wedged between a wine bottle box and the leg of an old wooden cabinet. Some nervous guy in a suit handed it to Olivia like he was returning contraband to a federal agent. She didn't even look at him. She took the earring in her gloved hand, inspected the bent clasp in the light, then walked over to me and gently placed it in my palm. Her eyes met mine for a brief second and then she turned back toward the room. By then the apartment had gone completely still again. Nobody knew what to say. No one dared. She stepped toward the center of the room once more and spoke without raising her voice. "I've rewritten my will," she said plainly. "It's done. Signed. Witnessed." The words dropped like a pin in water, small but sharp enough to pierce everything. "She's the only one who's earned anything here," Olivia said. "Haley. She built her life herself. With no help. She owes no one in this room a thing. Not love. Not property. Not silence. Not forgiveness." Someone gasped, maybe one of my cousins near the kitchen. I didn't turn to see. I couldn't take my eyes off her. "She gets the business," Olivia continued, her voice still quiet but louder in effect than any scream I'd heard that night. "She gets the properties. The stocks. The legacy." That last word rang out longer than the rest. Legacy. A word no one in our family used lightly. It didn't just mean money, it meant name, power, respect. "She gets everything," Olivia finished. And then the room imploded. Brianna collapsed into loud, broken sobs right there on the carpet, like a child who had just learned there was no Santa. Her mascara ran in streaks down her face, mouth open, wailing. My mother screamed, not words, just a raw, high-pitched sound of disbelief and panic. She grabbed Olivia's arm, shaking her head, trying to plead, to argue, to undo something that had already been sealed in ink and legality. But Olivia didn't budge. My father said nothing. He hadn't said anything since she walked through the door. He stood motionless, his glass still half full, staring at the rug like he might fall into it if he looked up. His silence was louder than my mother's rage, heavier than my sister's tears. It was a surrender. He knew. People started recording. Of course they did. Phones raised, lenses aimed, the glow of screens lighting up the room like tiny judgmental flashlights. The same people who had clapped when my father tried to give away my apartment were now uploading videos to Instagram, TikTok, God knows where else. I saw someone whispering into their Apple Watch. Someone else texting furiously. It would be online within the hour. Maybe it already was. I just stood there, coat still half on, earring clenched in my hand, and watched as everything that had been hidden under the surface of our family finally boiled over in front of strangers, friends, neighbors, coworkers. No one tried to stop it. No one could. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. The video, 3 minutes and 12 seconds, shaky but clear, went viral overnight. The footage showed everything. My father striking me, the earring falling to the floor, the stunned silence, and then Olivia walking in like some force of nature and dismantling the entire illusion of our family's perfection in front of everyone. By morning it was everywhere. It was on Reddit threads, parenting forums, women in tech subgroups, even business blogs under headlines like, "Silicon Valley Patriarch Humiliates Daughter at Sister's Party, Then Gets Dismantled by Matriarch." There was no stopping it. No press release could clean it up. No phone call could erase what had been seen. My father's reputation, once ironclad in Seattle's tech and real estate circles, began unraveling faster than I thought possible. Clients started pulling out within days. Contracts were terminated. Some of the investors he'd depended on for years released quiet but definitive statements about re-evaluating partnerships. A software startup he was supposed to merge with dropped out without explanation. Within 3 weeks, 2 of his companies were undergoing internal audits, and 3 board members resigned. By the second month, the whispers turned into headlines. Lawsuits began to emerge, mostly unrelated, but no one gave him the benefit of the doubt anymore. He had become toxic. And it wasn't just the business world. It was social. Personal. His entire identity had been built on this image of being a strong, generous, respected father and leader. That image was shattered. People stopped calling. Friends distanced themselves. He tried to show up at a local gala 2 weeks after the incident, and the organizers asked him to leave after multiple attendees complained. He didn't argue. He just left. Brianna's engagement didn't survive either. Her fiancé Caleb had stayed quiet that night at the party, hovering behind her like a prop, saying nothing as things fell apart. But 2 days later he returned the ring. According to a mutual friend, he told her he couldn't marry into a family that covered violence with champagne toasts. He also said something about how she stood there and watched it happen without speaking up. That stuck with her apparently. She called me once in the middle of the night, crying. I didn't answer. My mother fared no better. She had spent years curating her place in the city's social circles. Fundraisers, museum boards, exclusive yoga retreats, little charity luncheons where appearances mattered more than causes. But that world runs on reputation, and hers had been scorched beyond repair. The same women she used to dine with stopped replying to her emails. Her name was quietly removed from a committee she'd chaired for 6 years. When she showed up to a book club meeting at the country club, no one sat next to her. They didn't have to say a word. He got the message. They tried to spin it for a while. She told people I was unstable, emotional, manipulative. She even hinted that I had made it all up for attention. But the video didn't lie. And neither did my grandmother's statement, which she released a week later. It was brief, written in her signature terse style, and confirmed everything. She acknowledged the incident, reiterated the changes to the estate, and closed with a single sentence. This is what happens when you mistake cruelty for strength. After that, the silence around them became absolute. It was like watching them sink slowly into a pit they'd spent years digging brick by brick, with every ignored slight, every moment they chose image over truth. They had built their lives on control, on public admiration, on carefully managed facades. And now, stripped of those, there was nothing left but the truth. And the truth was ugly. I didn't reach out to them. I didn't need to. They had made their position clear the night of that party, and I had made mine. They had turned their backs on me for years. This time I left them behind. It was a Thursday evening just after 8. I had just finished a late meeting with my development team and was settling into the quiet of my apartment. My home, the one they once tried to take from me as if it were a birthday card instead of the product of years of sacrifice. I had a mug of tea in one hand, my laptop open on the coffee table, when the intercom buzzed. At first I thought it was a delivery. I hadn't ordered anything, but sometimes my neighbors got their units mixed up. I got up, pressed the button, and asked, yes. There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in over a month. My mother's. Haley, she said softly. Her voice cracked. It's us. Please. I froze. My stomach turned, not out of fear but from a deep, heavy fatigue. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to speak. But I buzzed them in, against my better judgment, and walked slowly to the door. A minute later there was a knock. I opened it. They both stood there. My mother was in a pale coat, her hair undone, no makeup, her eyes swollen and red. My father looked smaller somehow, as if the weight of everything that had happened had physically compressed him. He didn't say anything. He just stood behind her, hands in the pockets of his coat, eyes to the floor. She took a small step forward, then stopped. We're so sorry, she said. Her voice was shaky. We didn't come here to fight. We needed to tell you we're sorry. Tears welled up in her eyes immediately, and she tried to hold them back, but they came anyway. I let it happen, she whispered. I let it all happen, and I should have stopped it. I should have protected you. My father finally looked up. His mouth opened, and for a second I thought he wouldn't say anything at all. But then quietly he said, I was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to tell you that. There were tears in his eyes, too. And for a moment I felt nothing. Not anger. Not relief. Just emptiness. Like they were two strangers who had come to apologize for something that happened to someone else. I stood there in silence for a few seconds, the hallway light buzzing above us, the sound of a neighbor's dog barking faintly in the distance. Then I spoke. You chose her, I said. Over and over again. Even when she didn't need you. Even when she had everything. You chose her. My mother shook her head, eyes wide. We didn't mean. I didn't let her finish. You chose her instead of me, I repeated. My voice was calm, steady. And now that you've lost her, you come back to me like I'm the backup plan. They didn't answer. I don't know you anymore, I said. My mother opened her mouth again, but the look on my face must have stopped her. I took a step back gently and closed the door in their faces. No slamming. No shouting. Just the soft sound of finality as the lock slid into place. I stood there for a long time, staring at the grain of the wood, listening to their muffled footsteps retreating down the hallway. And when the silence returned, it wasn't empty. It was peace. Sunlight pours through the windows of my apartment, warming the hardwood floors and catching on the glass shelves where I've started to keep small, quiet things that bring me peace. A ceramic bowl I found in a tiny shop in Portland, a photo of my team on launch day, A pressed yellow rose from a bouquet Olivia gave me last month. For the first time in my life, this place feels like it truly belongs to me. Not just legally but emotionally. It's no longer a status symbol or a hiding place. It's my home. My company is thriving. We secured our second round of funding last quarter, and the new hires bring with them a kind of energy I haven't felt in years. Curious, ambitious, collaborative. We work late sometimes, but not because we have to. Because we care. I no longer walk into meetings bracing for condescension or trying to make myself smaller to be taken seriously. I speak and people listen. Not because they're obligated to, but because they trust me. And my friends, God, my friends. They stayed. Through all of it. They were the ones who sat beside me on the floor that first night after the party, bringing takeout and silence and, eventually, laughter. They helped me pack up the boxes of memories I no longer needed to carry. They filled the empty spaces not with pity but with presence. They didn't ask for explanations or sides. They just stayed. And in doing so, they reminded me what love without conditions looks like. Olivia and I have lunch nearly every Sunday now. She brings a little cloth bag of pastries she insists on picking up herself, even though I always offer to send a driver. We sit at the kitchen table, the one I once built myself from reclaimed wood when I couldn't afford real furniture, and we eat slowly, talk deliberately without hurry. She always asks about work, but more than that, about how I'm sleeping, what book I'm reading, if the jasmine on the balcony is blooming yet. Last week she handed me a thick envelope over coffee. Her will. The final version. Stunned, she said. Signed and notarized. She didn't need to say what was in it. I already knew. When I looked up, she was watching me carefully, and then she said in that quiet, unwavering voice that never needed to be loud to be powerful, "You're my pride, Haley. Not just because of what you've built, but because you never stopped being yourself, even when it would have been easier to disappear." It hit me deeper than I expected. Not because I needed her approval, but because it was given freely, without transaction, without performance. She loved me without conditions. And in that moment I understood something I had never fully grasped before. I had spent most of my life chasing a kind of love that was always out of reach, tied to expectations, achievements, silence. I had tried so hard to earn it that I didn't realize the kind I truly needed was already blooming quietly around me. From Olivia. From my friends. From the life I had carved out on my own, piece by piece. I no longer need to prove anything to anyone. I no longer wonder if I'm enough. I no longer search for love in places that always required me to bleed for it. Because now, finally, I've created it around me. Love that doesn't question. That doesn't demand. That doesn't vanish when I say no. Family isn't blood. It's the people who don't betray you. And now I finally understand that.